Unacademy. Let's crack it.
Well, it's fantastic to be here. This is an unusual kind of thing. I've never done something quite like this before. I travel all over the world. I've been to India many times, giving speeches, talking to young learners, entrepreneurs, and so forth. So now I'm doing it in my spare bedroom from home, because we're all staying at home now to be safe, and because I'm on Unacademy, which is a very innovative platform for people to be able to learn in new ways. So I'm going to talk about my experience, about my personal story, about my life story, about innovation, about education. And I really hope that you will find it very interesting and will in some way support you as you're moving forward in your own learning experiences and in your own careers and your own life. When I grew up, my mother and my grandmother were not happy with the quality of the local schools. They knew that if I went to the local schools that it wouldn't be so great. The area where I grew up, Alabama, is not known for great education, although I think it's improved over the years. But at that time, they felt it was important enough that they started a small school, and there were just 4 children in the same grade with me. So this is an unusual environment, and I think it did help me to become really an entrepreneur, because in this young environment, I was really given a lot of free time. We were allowed to pursue our interests for a certain period every day. I read books. I could follow whatever I wanted. In fact, one of the most favorite pastimes I had was just reading the World Book Encyclopedia, which is an encyclopedia for children, and I really enjoyed doing that. So whenever I'm asked to give a speech like this to learners and to students, people assume I'm going to talk about my success, and of course I will a little bit. But I actually think talking about my success is not as interesting. Success and the story of how things went right and all of that, okay, well, it's kind of fun to hear about. But the more interesting thing is failure. Jimmy Wales is good at it. So the first thing to talk about here is when you think about entrepreneurship and you think about going out and doing something innovative, there's a huge myth around entrepreneurship, and that myth is driven by the stories of a handful of people. So people like Mark Zuckerberg and people like Bill Gates. And the myth goes something like this, that to be a successful entrepreneur, you have to have that one genius idea when you're about 22 years old, maybe 20 years old. And then you pursue that and it goes straight to the moon and you become the wealthiest person in the world or whatever it might be. And it's all this unbelievable miracle of success and so forth. But the truth is that's not the experience of most entrepreneurs. Most entrepreneurs know that your first idea doesn't work. Sometimes your second idea doesn't work. Sometimes your third idea doesn't work. None of your ideas work. And then you end up very talented and experienced and you get a good job at the end of it. But in general, I think there's more to learn from the cases of failure than from cases of success. So this is Chicago, downtown Chicago. My first job when I got out of university, I worked in downtown Chicago in the financial markets. So I was working for a trading firm. We were trading futures and options and so forth. And it was a good job and I liked it. But, I'm an entrepreneur and I was just looking around. And at that time, this is in the late 90s, there was no such thing as online food delivery. That didn't exist back then. And I saw people were using very inefficient ways to get food at work. So you would fax in your orders on an old-timey fax machine, or you would call and you have to repeat your order several times because they write it down wrong and they repeat it back to you. It was very slow. You send someone out to get the food, and I thought, let's put all this on the internet. Instead of doing it in this old-fashioned way, it was obvious to me in 1990, must have been about 1996, that this would go onto the internet, and that we would have a business doing it. And so, what was the result? Brilliant business idea, failure. Jimmy Wales is good at it. In 1996, restaurant owners looked at me like I was from Mars. I set up this little website where you put in the menu and people could order food, but I went down to all the restaurants in the area. I'd go in and talk to the owner, and they literally had no idea what I was talking about. I mean, it was very hard to convince them to sign up. They didn't really understand what it meant. If you didn't have restaurants signed up, then you couldn't really get the customers involved and so on. And so it just didn't work at that time. So that was disheartening, but I did learn from it. What did I learn there? Well, I got the courage to go out and talk to restaurant owners, and they turned me down. So I learned a little bit about sales. And then I learned about programming. I learned about setting up a website, so all of the things. I was able to set up a website. It wasn't great, but I learned through the process. And so I just carried on. So what was different about Wikipedia? The main thing that's different about Wikipedia is it's fun. It's open. Anyone can join. Anyone can participate. I told you the story of me trying to write about Robert Merton. An amusing side note is some years later, after Wikipedia was launched, I just happened to be online and I saw a news flash come up. Robert Altman had won the Nobel Prize in economics, and I went to look at Wikipedia to learn about his work, and I found out that we didn't have an entry about him. So I thought, oh, wow, I'm going to start the entry. And all I did is I went on there. You can actually go back and look in the history of Robert Altman. You can find my early edits. And I just typed something like, he won the Nobel Prize, ! And I hit save. Well, that's not a very good Wikipedia entry, but it was a start, and I enjoyed doing it. I had a moment in time when I could just do that, and I'd be the first person. And then I would come back, and I would say within 2 to 3 days, within a week, within a month, that entry about Robert Altman grew and grew as people came and they added more, and they discussed and they debated and they worked and they improved it and so on. And soon, within 2 weeks, the thing that I had started with just one sentence had grown organically to become this really wonderful Wikipedia entry. People who are fans of modern, super complicated TV shows, of super complicated video games, they come and they write unbelievably detailed content, like really in-depth dives about those games, about those things. And it's about fans and things that people are passionate about. And so, whereas with Wikipedia, the motivation that a lot of people have in Wikipedia is education, sharing knowledge, helping the world. In fandom, it's really more about the thing that I'm passionate about. If I'm really passionate about a particular video game, or about the Star Wars franchise, or any of the modern TV shows, Game of Thrones wiki is huge, then people come and they put in huge amounts of content. They spend a lot of time and a lot of love making it high quality, which means that readers come because they know it's the place you can go to find out everything you need to know about this new franchise that you're interested in. Mythological stories about a Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook or Bill Gates at Microsoft, and you think, I'm going to have this brilliant idea and I'm going to go out and do it, and it's going to take to the moon. But if you've tied your ego to that one thing, then if you have a bump, you're going to be very fearful that your entire life image of yourself is going to come crashing down. Instead, think of yourself as an entrepreneur first, and the particular project as a project that might work out or might not. Because the truth is, real entrepreneurs fail and fail and fail. The key is you've got to enjoy yourself along the way. Enjoy yourself along the way, and in the end, you will succeed. What is that success going to look like? Well, it might not look like Mark Zuckerberg or Jeff Bezos, right? Those are ridiculous ideals. But what it might look like is a good business with 25 employees who respect you because you look after their interests and you do the right thing by your employees. You're making a profit. You're able to support yourself, your family, and that's a huge success in life. Or it might look like none of your business ideas worked out, but you learned a lot along the way, and therefore you were able to get a fantastic job at, maybe it's a Google, maybe it's whatever, maybe it's a bank, whatever organization that fits your particular area of interest. And you'll go into that and you'll be a person who can actually do that job, not as a sort of a solid kind of bureaucrat, but as somebody who's innovative and thoughtful. You've learned to work with people, you've learned to get things done. Even if the actual business didn't succeed, you've grown as a part of it, and therefore you've succeeded. So education and research. I just wanted to say this one last thing. So I talk a lot about creativity. I talk a lot about not worrying too much about what other people think. I think the bedrock of all this is education and learning and research. And what you're all doing here on Unacademy, you're taking courses. I looked through the list of courses. There are very practical courses to pass certain exams and so on and so forth. This is fantastic. This is exactly what you need. But also, as you're doing that, learn the skills of learning, the skills of education. Just as I don't have to learn anything anymore. I could just sit back and give speeches for the rest of my life. Instead, I'm taking online courses about programming because I feel that that element of life, that ongoing education through your whole life, is really what makes life worth living and makes life fun. So don't be intimidated by a big company. And guess what? You can sometimes build something and be a successful entrepreneur and actually not stay as a standalone, right? You build something, you're faster to the punch. A big company's trying to do the same thing, but because you're nimble, because you don't have the heavy layers of decision making there, you're able to get there first, you're able to become successful. And you know what? Sometimes they just go, you know what? You win. We're going to buy you. Here's $20 million. And I would call that a success. Even if you're not Bill Gates or whoever, Steve Jobs. Good luck with your studies and go for it.